All right, if you're here, you know already about the mud fossils and that they can turn into exact copies of what they were, only now they're stone. And some of them still have blood in them. And I had ones that had blood in them. I had them DNA tested. I know you know this. If you're here, I can't imagine you don't know about that. But anyway, and I found giants, like this hair follicle from whatever it was from. I don't know, because I didn't have this DNA tested. But I did have 3 things DNA tested. And 2 of them were giants, certainly not this big. But one of them had a 3-foot long finger tip, just a tip, the very end tip. And it still had the fingernail and prints on it. But this is a hair follicle, and that is the erector pili muscle. I know you've probably seen this a dozen times. And that right there is the sebaceous gland. And it slurps right up to there. See, it all the way goes way up to there. Normally it would have been way up here. But the whole thing slid down, and the slurp just laid down here. So, and then there's the root ball down there, and then those 2 little dots there. That's the vein and the artery at the bottom. Now, there's the hair shaft at the top. These are just giants. Now, that's the one thing I'm going to be talking about, because that's how the whole thing started. If I hadn't found the giants, I would have never started on this quest to see what else was wrong. And everything was. And I knew it back, way back. This was my paper I did, and you can see it's been well shopped. And this was to show that there was no such thing as a huge proton, which was positive, and a tiny couple of little negative electrons. They just go like that. That's the end of it. So I knew it wasn't right. So I did all this stuff about dipole molecular moments and dipoles, and there's only 2 types of energy. There's dipoles, and there's polar and nonpolar. And the transfer of energy is from light to atomic vapor. Light is literally atomic vapor. It's the vapor of atoms. It's the vapor of protons. And what it is, hold on. All right, that's a proton. Energy, which is light, is this. It's the vapor from this. It's like if this was a ball of water, a little drop of water, and you had moisture in the air, it would be this compared to the drop of water. Exact same thing. And there's not much difference between water and light. They both flow, and it's a very similar concept. Anyway, I'm going to get into everything, because I got the mud fossils, I got the light experiments, we accelerated light. The new model is the electron flood theory. I got all that documented, which means that there's nothing more than those 2 little particles, which is the muon, the electron, neutrino. I'm going to go through all that stuff, but I'm going to lead you down this path with just a sit-down discussion. I want to get it documented, just so the whole thing right from start to end, to where we are now, because I think we're starting to see a little change in society, to start to understand things are not the way we thought they were. And if you're just told to shut up and say what you're told to say, or you fail, that's not education to me. When I can bring something out and present something in a scientifically evidential way, like the mud fossils with the DNA and the CAT scans and the specimens and, all the things I just showed you, even as a hair follicle. How do they explain that? How can you possibly explain that? And they can't, and they know they can't. But I can tell you what, if you drilled in here deep enough, you would find some DNA. Well, I'm pretty sure. I have other ones that have DNA just coming right out of them. So I knew that I was right, and I had my DNA tests done, and I had CAT scans done and everything else, and it didn't make any difference. And I want to make one statement right now. Jesse Garant and Associates, the best people in the world for doing CAT scans. They were so gracious to me, you could never even possibly imagine. They did 7 CAT scans, 2D and 3D, didn't charge me a penny. They know science. They knew everything that I was presenting. Now, I'm not saying they endorsed what I'm showing. They just, when I explained it to the people I was working with there, they understood, and of course I sent them pictures and this and that of the things I had, and I think at that time I already had a DNA test done, so there was no question what they were. They just need to be CAT scanned. So anyway, we're going to have a pretty long discussion about this, how this all unfolded, and then when I realized it didn't matter even if you had the evidence. I thought if you had the evidence, there's no question whatsoever to have to pay attention. It just didn't matter whatsoever. It had no difference whatsoever. The only thing it did was get me blocked and locked out of everywhere so that I could not show that evidence. Exactly what they did to Velikovsky. They made him take his book off the bookshelves, 11 weeks on #1 on the bestseller list, and they took it off the bookshelves. And then for the rest of his life, they just, and even right now you read about him, the same thing. Hold on, I'll show you. See, there it is right there. Worlds in Collision was the book he wrote. All right, and there was a time, written in ancient texts, it said the world basically stood still. And the reason was we almost got impacted by Venus. And its atmosphere hit with ours. So as we're spinning, it hit, and all of the waters flowed all over the Earth. It created the Triassic layers on the Earth. One worldwide layer of red bed, gray clay, black cap. The red blood is the fleshy stuff that boiled off all these creatures. They're really the red bloody flesh. And then after that came the body organs and parts and bones and all that sort of dissolved. And that created the gray clay. So red bed, gray clay. And then black cap was all the fallout from the volcanoes and the combustion and all that stuff. And I have an actual human footprint in the middle of that. I've shown that it's undeniable. And I am right here in the Triassic zone, right down the street, 6 miles away from here is the Dinosaur State Park. They have huge dinosaur tracks in the same Triassic zone, Triassic layer. Very well researched. And I have a bunch of videos on that. So I'm seeing the timeline is completely wrong, because Velikovsky said this only happened 3,500 years ago, approximately 1500 BC, right in that area. And at that time, all of these giants that were on Earth were killed and boiled in the flood, literally boiled from the impact of Venus into our atmosphere, burning it all up and all that stuff. So I wrote a book about him and my mud fossils. It's called, well, hold on a second. Now, I see this goes back to 2016, early in 2016, February. Now, this is Mud Fossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision, because I had been working with Yale for 5 years or so trying to get them to pay attention to this research. Even with CAT scans, the DNA, it didn't help. So I said the discovery of mud fossils a few years ago led on a journey can only be described as wild and crazy. The evidence uncovered is discussed, and many links to videos prove the claims are made. Hundreds of samples are eventually completely scrutinized, many scientific tests in a variety of ways, DNA tests, positive for human mitochondrial DNA. I had 3 tests. Contamination was ruled out. All negative control tests were in fact negative for contamination. It goes on 7 CAT scans. And this is back in 2016. All this stuff was done. And I never wanted to do the CAT scans, the DNA. It was expensive stuff. Thank God for Jesse Garant. And I'm telling you, those people, if you ever wanted anything CAT scan, Jesse Garant and Associates, unbelievable. Because I could have never afforded to do that. And the DNA test was expensive too, but I had to prove what I was just showing. And then I still ran into this. So that's when I wrote this book. It's only 99 cents. You just get to read it, but it speaks about, what I encountered. You can read more. What do they have here? I haven't even looked at this, to be honest with you. Scary stories, yes. Silly, no. Reality, absolutely. Velikovsky was literally attacked, and that will stop right now. It did not. I said this. I got this guy covered. Didn't help. There it is right here, still in Wikipedia. This is Worlds in Collision. Emanuel Velikovsky, published 1950, pulled off the bookshelves. it postulated that in 15th century BC, the planet Venus was ejected from Jupiter as a comet or comet-like object passed near to Earth, almost hit Earth. Almost. The object allegedly changed Earth's orbit and axis, causing innumerable catastrophes are mentioned in early mythologies, 100% of them. He went not only to 1 or 2 or 3 or 10, he went everywhere in the world. He went to Mesoamerica, everywhere. So he's got everything now. So they talk about mythologies and religions. Yes, that's what those were the only people that could write. The book has been heavily criticized as a work of pseudoscience and catastrophism. Many of its claims are completely rejected by the established scientific community as they are not supported by any available evidence. I have so much evidence to support what he said, it's just coming out of my ears. I can't see anything that he said that is not true. All right, when you take that impact of Venus almost hitting Earth, it boiled the oceans, and this is recorded. It's recorded. It's not just, I'm not the one saying it. And even in the Colburn Bible, and they took all of these texts that talked about the real things about giants and dragons and all that. They sort of sidelined some of that stuff because it was just too much for the average human mind. After it was down the road a few generations, they say, oh, you believe that stuff? That's what you hear now. You can't believe that stuff. Well, I believe it because I have it. I have this, and I can show it to you, and I will, and I have hundreds of times. And the average human mind and the academic society, the academic business, it's a business, trust me, that is not, they're not there to educate anybody. They are there to create conditions that stabilize their environment. So in other words, you can't go there with any opinion. And that's what happened to me with all my work. All this stuff I did. The professor, after I did everything, and I showed, I had so much work done on this. He said, oh, I give you a B+. I said, no, you're not. You're going to give me an A. And he did, because I said, all right, well, let's figure out the dipole molecular moment of potassium chloride or something like that. And he said, all right, I'll give it an A. I knew so much more about it than him. It was just ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous. He was so, and that's what that's academia. So anyway, all right, I'm going to go through my background in a minute, but I just want to establish one thing right now. You see this GT 139? GT 139. This is when I was in the Army, on my discharge papers. Now, so that's a GT score. And that means your general technical. All right, you see this? This means nothing to me, trust me. I was just what I am, you are what you are, who cares? But this is what I was tested. Everybody gets tested when you go in the Army for this general technical. And these are the test scores accepted by American Mensa, which is a bunch of eggheads that think they're geniuses. All right, now, this is the Army GT that I just talked about. Prior to 10 of 80, that's 1980, I was in 1970, you needed a 136. You see, you need a 136 prior to 1080, and that's for that GT. Where'd it go? There it is right there. Army GT. No. So, I had a 139. Now, 136, they put you as a genius, or it's in the 98th percentile, and then it gets exceptional genius and whatever. And I was 139, so I was up above that. Now, I'm not bragging about it, because it's just true. So if it's bragging, that's bragging. But if it ain't bragging, if it's true, it's just true. Everybody thinks I'm an idiot. But, you know, I might be an idiot, but I see reality. And then I have found out that, you know, everybody reacts according to how they've been programmed. It's called menticide. I didn't realize it could possibly be true. It is. People get so brainwashed by academia, they refuse. The first thing out of their mouth, for the last 10 or 15 years, is, where's the peer review? I said, I won't look at it, stuff. I said, there is no peer review. There's nobody to review it. Why don't you review it? No, I'm not going to look at it if it's not peer reviewed. I said, oh, well, there we go. So anyway, peer review is racketeering. It is. It's domination. And it's just like having a whole bunch of thugs say, if you don't say what we tell you to say, you are no longer a peer. You are de-peered. And you will dis-e-peer because you won't be seen by your peers anymore, and you dis-e-peer. All right, just like they call it pareidolia, the things I see. Like I can see anything in anything. Well, I call it PhD-olia, where you can't see anything, where it's right there in front of your face. Anyway, so let's get into this talk. Like I say, it's going to be a ramble, but I want to get it down somehow. Or maybe even I'll do it in a couple of hits. Who knows? We'll see. All right, you see this? Astrobiology. Astrobiological breakthrough. Well, what's the breakthrough? They're detecting life in the ice grains of outer moons. Well, you see these things shooting out of here, these little spots? Well, what's that all about? Why is it only right in this area and they're shooting out and not like that? Well, I think I can explain it. Now, they're talking about ice jets. Well, can they tell it's ice? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of liquid in there, but what else is in that mix of fume that's coming out of there? Is it just water? They're talking about being salty water. I'm not sure that's all it is. But I can tell you what, this is biological, my friends. That is biology. All right? That just didn't happen by accident. Now, and I can show you these moons. They are basically they look like tendinenthesis. And that's where that water would have been shooting up out of where the attachments went into there. All right, they're looking at that moon. I can almost guarantee you what they're seeing is this vapor shooting out of here. And it's from these investments to come down in there. When they break off, they're open to gas off. Now, I don't know exactly what they're showing, where the gases are coming from. But this is what happens on these moons. There's a tendon stalk that comes down here that anchors right all the way out to here. That's just thing snapped right off of there. The stalk, which is basically in the center, and this is sort of where it flares out, well, the whole thing snapped right off. Now, what happens is you get this layer here is the outside where they had all those little modelly looking stuff out there. And then underneath that, you have like sort of a flat layer, which is the substrate for this layer. And then below this layer, you have another lower layer. And these two here are the vein and the artery, I believe. I'm almost certain of that. Because you see this one here? It has that little thing shooting out of there. And that's where gases could very easily shoot out of. Or it could be out of there. Or anywhere where there's water. You know, any of these little pock marks. But primarily you're going to see there's nerves go and the veins and the arteries go back and forth. Because you got to service it with blood. And the one like Comet 67P, you can see where the gases shoot out of there. And I believe that's probably what they're seeing out there. You know, I'm not seeing any gases shooting out of theirs, but I'll show you out of Comet 67P. And it's when the sun hits it just exactly in the right place to go into the tube, it pops out of there. This is just an artist's rendering. And down here, I don't see any gases coming out of here at all. They must see something, but I don't see it. Do you? I don't see it. You see it right here. It's shooting out right down here. And it's just squirting out right out of there. Ice-coated particles. Ice-coated. There's going to be water coming out of there. Yes, absolutely. Organic and salty water droplets dispersed. Let me show you what happens if it's real close up to the sun. When we get comets, here's what happens. Comet 67P. See, this goes way back, 2015. The European Space Agency sent a lander up here. It was called a Filet Lander. And it landed down in here. And it took samples, and they checked it. It's all organic. It was all just basically like blood. Now, you see that shooting out of there? This isn't just dust blown off of these comets. When they come in close enough to the sun where it really irradiates, the places where there's a lot of blood and moisture, they shoot out of here. That's exactly what they're seeing up on this other thing. I'm sure it is. But this one here is an artery. And that baby is huge, 500 feet across. This thing's gigantic. But it's a hip socket. And I'm pretty well proven this. Well, when I say proven it, I can show it. It's just, and nobody can deny it if you look. Now, these are these little jets they're talking about shooting out. Those are little blood vessels. It's the same exact same thing. All right, if you don't think this is a hip joint, I'll show you what it is. Right here. That's it. It comes down and it comes across and it fractured off right there. And this is not an uncommon thing. Sometimes they fracture here, sometimes they fracture up in here. And this is what it looks like in the body. These are the way they fracture. This is more of what we saw before, but I think it's way out here. It comes across somewhere right about there. Now, this is what it looks like as it's in the human body. And there are stalks coming out of here that allow it to move and sort of pull against it. These are the tendons. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in the actual. These are tendons. That's a tendon stalk. And that ran up to, say, over here somewhere. And it probably went on the other side that let it move. So, you know, these things here pull. They're under tension. All right, that's what a tendon is. And these are tendons too. All those little stripes, you see? Those are all tendons. And they slide against each other so that you can move around, but they're tight. They're really tight. But they slide against each other. This is the same thing. It's a bundle. And it was going to go off to somewhere else so that it could pull the thing back. When it went this way, it will pull it back, something like that. So anyway, they're right. This is astrobiological. This is a tendon ball. I mean, they basically all are that I can see. Everything out there is biological as far as I'm concerned. I have meteorites right here in my shop they have blood coming out of them. They could be tested. Blood's coming out of almost all of them. But do you see, this is what they are. They break off just like this. Now this is Mimus or Tetchus or Iapetus is just the same thing, only it has a ridge coming around it. They call it the equatorial ridge. And there are ones like that I find on Earth, the same things. They have a ridge around them. It's not common, but they're there. Most of them are just like this. All these little pits like this are so that when the biology locks into it, that puppy's not going to come out of there. That's an anchor. And that strap pulls against a muscle primarily. So you got some of it down here and you got some of it up here, tendon, all right? And you pull, your muscle can squinch like this, but the tendon, it doesn't. So for a certain distance out here, there's going to be no really give to it, just a taste. But once you get past that, you get into the muscle, and the muscle just, it does this. But not this, not the tendon. All right, here it is right here. Space smells like steak and burning metals. Those who have been in the International Space Station compared the smell to burnt steak. They're polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And it has the certain smell is like the source of a metallic burnt metal meat steak. Burnt meat steak. It's metals, because all your blood is made of metals. And you know, and fluids, primarily metals are what's in your blood. They call them polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and they're found in charred foods on Earth. You see this? Whole blood plasma. This is what's in whole blood plasma. 26 metals that they're looking for. A panel of 26 elements quantified in whole blood. These are all metals: lithium, beryllium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, right down the line. These are the transition metals. They carry things back and forth in your body. That's how, because they're charged particles, and they have a charge to them. They can grab a hold of something. It's called ligands. They attach around the metal core, and they bring them to wherever they have to go and drop them off. You grab something else and come back and have that cleaned up. Very, very amazing system, these transition metals. But this is what's in your blood. This is whole blood. All of those. And then they don't even show iron here because iron is so ubiquitous in blood. It's just everywhere, just tons of it. And then, you know, this is all, that's in your blood. So that's what they're smelling in space. And that's what 67P is cooking off, as you saw. But it's got to be close enough to the sun where the radiation is in there. And then it's got to go right down the tube and hit. And that's when they gas off like that. And then they'll not gas off a little bit. And then they'll gas, they tumble. Sometimes they stay in the same course. I don't know. However that beam hits, it has to hit exactly into the crevices to get to where the blood is. As soon as it gets there, it's going to gas off, and then they're going to smell it like it smells like steak. Okay, I think I mentioned in this video or the other ones that we have to change education. These are all the new books we're getting written now that show us things that we were kept apart from, that we couldn't learn about because they didn't fall into the paradigm that we're being taught. These are all new books being written by my friend Paul Amatucci. All right. These are all things that nobody's been able to even think about because, you know, like this here. This is almost 10 years ago. This is 11/20/15. They're just starting to talk about it now. The draining of the Sahara, it went right across the eye of the Sahara. And I've detailed that out very well. And I've also shown the dragon. These are dragons and titans of the earth. And Paul's making these books, and they're coffee table books. They're not expensive, and this is just to get you started and get people talking and thinking about things. And it's Paul Amatucci, right? By Paul Amatucci, and he's got a lot of books of his own, but he's also done a lot of mine, which I was happy with that. I said, yeah, use the papers. He's just taking my papers from whenever I had put them up on academia.edu, and he's sort of putting them into a nice little format. You can sit down and look at it and, you know, see some pictures and stuff. There's a lot of pictures in these, though. You know, they're really brief, just getting you started, because they were only from papers. But the next book we're going to do is going to be top to bottom, everything, right from the beginning of all of these books, chapter after chapter after chapter, and in a brief format, and then videos that will explain the details, because I got so many videos now. And then probably we're going to have a private channel where we can discuss these things, you know, between people that are really interested. And, you know, and I'll probably do a lot of live stuff on that channel. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but the first thing we have to do is get all these books to be understood. That there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know. And the things that we do know are not really, you know, we have to check them. We just have to look at them. If they're wrong, they're wrong. If they're right, they're right. That's all. Simple as that. All right, so I'm gonna put this one off for today. We're done. And like I said, I want to do a sit down and just start from the beginning to the end, how this all unfolded, all the interactions, the discoveries, the people that contributed, everything, right from the beginning to where we are today. And I can see now that we're starting to get somewhere where there is some acceptance, certainly by people that are willing to look. Because once you're willing to look, you can't, we've all been saying now, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it. The only thing you can do is dismiss it and say, I'm not going to look at it. If that's the case, that's ignorance is bliss. Because you have to be able, if you're presented with evidence, if you're presented with some scientific specimens and evidence, and then it's obligatory for you to look at it, or just walk away. That's okay. You walk away, it's fine. But when I get assaulted and get dismissed, and the teachers and everything, that's their job, is to teach these kids truth. And I don't see that as being done. That's what upsets me. And, that's why all this has to be taken care of. And all this stuff has to be started over again. We should have our own school system. You don't have to go to places that are just, really, I'm telling you right now, all it's become is a place to draw funds. These Ivy Leagues, I call it the poison Ivy League now. And I'm telling you right now, it's not a good situation to have them so dominant over the kids. They say, you pay us a ton of money or you won't get this piece of paper. That means you're going to work in the fields. So if you want to get a good job, you better come to us, and then we'll tell everybody you're smart. Only, though, if you say what we tell you to say. If you put anything up against us, we'll ruin your life. Keep your money and tell everybody you're an idiot. And that, then you have to go on and make your own life. Because you can't go just sit around with everybody else drinking coffee and just talking about how wonderful life is because you had a good education. I'm telling you, that's what happens. You need a trade. You need to be able to actually physically do something. I worked in electronics, that's a trade. I mean, I had my own business, so everything was good for me. But I could not have worked in academia. Absolutely not. You're forced to say what they tell you to say. I had thought about a lot of things. I never really considered working in academia, to be perfectly honest with you. But it might have gone that way if my original work was somewhat even looked at. But you can't do that until you go and pay all that big money, and then you can maybe get amongst those people. But you better be careful what you say, otherwise you're back in the soup again. It's just become a place to stagnate. I'm sorry, that's just the case. So, and if you don't do anything about it, you don't do anything about it. Well, this is what we doing about it. All right, I love you all. Next one is going to be, I open my heart to you.